Hi, my name is Winslet, and welcome to my review for the Star Kings expansion in Age of Wonders Planetfall. Um, I'm joined by three guests here. We've got Dapperest Dragon, NeverZero, and Sedgehammer from the community. They played in the MP. We just got done playing. You guys want to say hi?
Yo, that'd be me, Dapperest.
Hey, Dapperest,
The Dapperest Dragon of all.
my ally.
For
Yeah,
now.
for now, yes. I'm excited to continue that one next weekend on Saturday. But people aren't really here for the MP. They're here to know generally how I feel about the review or how I feel about Star Kings. But also I wanted to get your input on it because I might be a little bit biased. I actually got a free press key as a content creator. I was able to do that, and I know a lot of people feel like that limits your ability to actually judge a product based on the dollar value. Did you all buy it yourselves?
Yeah,
I
I bought it myself here.
Yeah, I got it. I got it off
Previous
the Season
expansion.
Pass way back when.
So everybody watching this video, you can trust their word. I think that these guys are going to be able to give you an unbiased opinion. I'll start off by saying I highly recommend it. I think it's a phenomenal DLC and expansion. I'm not going to put a number on it. I'm not going to say 10 out of 10 or 9.8 out of 10 because it's close to a 10 out of 10 for me, but I feel like that is meaningless compared to words. I want to tell you what I like, what I don't like, and if I would recommend this to a friend, somebody that is maybe owns a base game or doesn't even own the base game. And I would say if you've got the money for it, this is a pretty good value. So yeah, let's get into why I think that about the DLC, the expansion, and then we'll jump into each individual one of yours opinion, whether or not you recommend it for friends. Um, I think the base game gets so much right. I think it's really really good right from the get go. And with every patch, with every expansion, it's just gotten better and better, more detailed. There was nothing game breaking who made the late game unplayable. I'm a big fan of Stellaris, but I feel like after a while you can't actually finish the game, which is really really disappointing. When I play Planetfall, I almost actually always take it to the end. I almost never leave a planet after killing two commanders and be like, that was good enough. I had fun. It's just more engaging in single player, multiplayer, what have you. There's this really cool thing called Empire mode they've introduced with the Star Kings expansion, which makes it replayable for single players. And I don't think I've actually seen something like that in any other 4X game. Have you guys seen anything quite like the Empire mode, the replayability in it?
I'll be honest, I don't think I have for 4X game, mind you, like a game mode where you can do a game and progress your empire outside of the game. I don't remember anything to mind.
I kind of. I've come across a couple of things that I can just about halfway remember, but very niche. Like there was one game, very niche and not nearly as well done, to be honest. There was one game called Forged Battalion, which was that was a real-time strategy game actually.
By
It was,
Petroglyph.
yeah, and it had that it had the meta progression tech tree, so that you could progress what sort of units you could design your own unit roster for going into the battle between matches. But in practice, it was like you earned experience for playing matches and mostly for multiplayer matches in a game that did not really find an audience. So that one didn't work out. But similar kind of concept, at least. It's not entirely new ground, but yeah, I haven't played a Galactic Empire in Planetfall yet, but from what I've seen of people talking about it, it does seem much better developed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the planet types. I think the planet traits rather is really awesome. You were gonna say something there, Sedge. Go for it.
Oh yeah. I just wanted sort of to echo that. I really think it's a really well developed mechanic, and I love to see it in the game. I think it really enhances the single player experience. I, as far as something that's similar, the only thing I can think of is the Dawn of War franchise had sort of a meta campaign
Like Dark Crusade and Soulstorm, that had the one where you go
Yeah.
around the planet, and yeah, I completely
And I
forgot
know-
about that.
I think Company of Heroes had the Ardennes Assault expansion that had something similar, but it wasn't nearly as interesting or complex as.
It wasn't nearly as in depth though. Like Dawn of War, you got a few honor guard units, and there were a couple of global effects that you had for specific provinces conquered.
Mm-hmm.
I just remembered another one. Battle for Middle Earth 2, War of the Ring game mode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love this way.
That's way back. It was Battle for Middle Earth 2.
I haven't played any of those, so it's just like all new information for me. And I think what I'm hearing from you all is this is the best way it's been done. People have done something like this before, but you really like the whole planet types and being able to kind of like see what you're going into, maybe counter that or tell like a role play story.
I mean, I just looked it up. For reference, Battle for Middle Earth 2 was released in 2006. So this is... It did exist. The whole paradigm of playing multiple missions and growing strengths between missions did exist back then, but let's be kindly and say that it's been iterated on a lot since it showed up then.
Yeah, and this is like mostly for single player, but I've actually seen recently that the devs have said something about trying to bring the planet traits to the multiplayer system, which is amazing. I think that just shows how cool Triumph is and how much they really love and care about their community and listen to them. They don't just like love their community, they actually listen to them and implement what people request. It's not just like because this is out we can't work on it anymore. They want to keep making it better and better and better.
Indeed. With the Battle for Middle Earth 2, they actually integrated its sort of empire layer kind of 4X bit out into multiplayer successfully back then. It had co-op multiplayer versus multiplayer, etc.
There are things that
So I think it's possible for this game.
I think there's still a couple things in this game that keep it from like, if I was going to give it a number, a 10 out of 10, like the keywords and certain things in the Imperial Archives don't link to things. The AI isn't amazing. Sectors and the UI were a little bit questionable the way they presented it at first, but they fixed that. So I'm actually pretty confident that some of these things are going to get worked on in the future, even if they're not at a perfect state at this point of the game. I do know that they're going to come back and rework on those types of things as much as possible in future patches. And who knows, we may even get more expansions that give them more income to work on things like this. And if you're on the fence, buying a copy now will do a lot of help. It will really help Triumph in regards of putting more resources back into things like Planetfall. And I'd like to encourage that as much as possible because I love this game. I really think it deserves a lot more attention.
If I had a small, like, kind of wish list thing I would want in it, I would say for the Imperial Archives, make it so you can put mods onto units and see how well it works on said unit from a UI point of view.
Honestly, if I had any kind of big ask, what I would want is just a skirmish mode to just test out, so you could just play around with a tactical battle with a custom designed army without bothering with the strategic layer.
Yeah, like
because
6
I
units.
like the strategic layer. It adds a lot to the game, but there are certain things where you want to just see how something works.
No matter how impossible such a... Sorry.
Yeah, but there are certain times when you just want to see how a unit or an operation works in practice that would benefit a lot from being able to just throw yourself into a kind of a white room fight.
I feel like I've heard them talk about it at one point because they have to have that in somewhere for developing the game. They have to be able to just be like, let's test this unit against that unit easily without like generating the units in the game and running them into each other. That seems like way too much work. And other games have done it. It's not like an unheard of thing to give to the players, but for whatever reason, I think they wanted to keep the interface light and that meant limiting things a little bit. But when it comes to just the overall planning and the layout, I think the UI is really good here. But the artistic design for each of these expansions has been really phenomenal, and I really enjoyed hearing Tom talk about how the first expansion was about the past. Revelations was about stuff that used to happen a long time ago. Invasions is more focused on what's happening at this point in time in the galaxy. There's an invasion of lizard people, and Star Kings is kind of like looking to the future. How do we rebuild a galactic society, not just a planet-wide society or like a couple planet-wide society, like a real thing to rival the Star Union. So I don't know what they'd actually do with a fourth expansion if they did it, but I'm confident that they would do something really cool.
With the campaign of this, I think I remember them saying, like, the developers saying, mind you, saying something about the fate of each race at the end of Star Kings or during the Star Kings campaign. I've encountered 2 characters, I think, in the first Oathbound mission that I recognized from the main campaign itself, not from the DLCs.
Yeah, the campaign's pretty good. I listened to it a little bit. I like the voice actress that they chose for the main person. Funny little French accent.
I will say that I love the aesthetic design. I like how it sort of mirrors Gundam or maybe Evangelion, some of the Japanese animes.
Yeah.
But, part of one issue I do have is that I'm not a huge fan of the gameplay of the Oathbound. And it's because of all of the stacking adjacency bonuses. I think it kind of leads to sort of a linear or a flat kind of gameplay. Whereas I feel like there's a lot more nuance to other factions, and because of flanking and combined arms, I haven't been enjoying the Oathbound, but I really like the Triceratops update.
Yeah,
that's what I'm trying to get at.
That's fair. I think that with a lot of these expansions and DLCs, the content that's new starts off better than it will be in its final stage of the game, and that's because they kind of want to sell the new faction. They want to make it look really, really impressive and really cool and special. But even after Heritor I got some nerfs, I don't think it put it on level with everything else. I still feel like it was like an amazing option, like too good of an option in a lot of ways. And Shirkan were similar, but I'm sure, like you're about to say, Dapperest, once you know a strategy, you can kind of rely on it pretty heavily.
I don't actually think it's a question of the new stuff starting out better. Like, this came up before in private conversations, and like somebody mentioned that idea, and the rejoinder is that, well, when Shirkan came out, they were, if anything, underpowered. It's mainly just a question of, like, when new stuff comes out, it's new, and throwing a whole reef of new content into the meta is gonna throw up some big question marks, and you don't entirely know how it's gonna shake out.
Yeah, well, I remember Shirkan struggled in the early game, but I always felt like their later game options were really good. There's that one secondary weapon that lets your heroes turn into siphoners. Basically, they can reset people, and that's like, oh wow, that's super special.
Yeah, but I mean, Assembly can do that with a hero's skill, and they were regarded as, for a long time, as like one of the weakest races in the game.
I think I'm not disagreeing with you here, but I will say that I do think Ninju and a couple of the other people we were playing with in the MP seem to be saying that, like, okay, Oathbound is just too crazy good to like compete with. Like we saw with Mr. No, right?
I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just my disagreement is more in like the reasons behind it. I don't think they're intentionally overpowered as a way of hyping them up. I think it's just a matter of they're the new faction. It's a massive chunk of new content to drop into things. Mistakes get made because you can't know how it's really going to turn out.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, no, I think that's an important distinction worth drawing, and I think we're on the same page now. There was one operation somebody was talking about.
Oh yeah,
you guys know the one I'm trying to find.
I
Insta kill
I
thing.
do want to pick up. A couple people have mentioned it now, but I do want to pick up the point that yeah, I really do appreciate the aesthetic of the factions in the game. Like the factions in Planetfall strike this very neat balance to me of, on the one hand, they're kind of aggressively generic, but they also have enough flourishes that they're never quite what you'd expect. Like, yes, there is a bug people hive mind that hates all humans because, you know, it's a sci-fi setting. You always get one of those.
Hmm.
But on the other hand, they hate all humans because they spent decades under human rules as colonially oppressed slaves after the old empire genetically engineered a puppet queen, and their whole story is about the direction they take in moving forward from that. There's a lot of very cool examinations of the whole idea of the bug people hive mind that hates all humans as a stock sci-fi trope there.
Hmm.
And there's a space undead faction, and you know they're basically Borg. You can describe them that way, and it's not inaccurate. But on the other hand, the particular flourish of making them descendants of a bunch of cloned test subjects who had to patch themselves together in a very slapdash way, and now they're just so gosh darn eager to share the joys of their new existence with everybody, and don't quite get why everybody keeps screaming in terror, puts a nice new spin on things. And like even the Vanguard, to look at the Vanguard, they are just the epitome of the boring normal humans. But then their lore has stuff like they're not entirely. They're more like half rough and tumble survivalism and half starry-eyed Star Trek nerdery.
Yeah.
The lore about Vanguard troopers, how their roster would be entirely drones and vehicles, but you got to have some flesh and blood grunts on the line, or nobody would feel compelled to support our troops.
I really
Yeah,
like the way the
or
factions are
even
written.
Mm.
I think it gives a lot of options for roleplay. Like, Kirko, just a quick example, have the option of kind of being forgiving or like ruthless, and that kind of narrative option that it gives you, I think is really, really cool. And I think Vanguard doesn't do it quite as well, but it appeals to certain characters, like certain personality traits, which is not mine. And I love that they have that option there. And I think the secret texts are amazing. In Age of Wonders 3, I'm sure one or two of you are familiar, the classes didn't feel that different. It's just not true in Planetfall. The secret texts, I think, throw a lot of flavor in there, and even within the races, the non-class option, there's a lot of flavors and choices to go between.
The tech quotes do an incredible job of that. Yeah, like there's a distinct difference between playing, say, a theocrat in Age of Wonders 3 and how that feels, and playing, say, Synumbra in Planetfall and hearing the voice actor for their tech quotes just really selling the snidely whiplash levels of wanton villainy.
Mm-hmm. So I actually went through everything I had in my notes. We could go through like all of the features and be like, we like this, we don't like that. But I think at this point, what I would like to do is just kind of get your general opinions. If there's anything you haven't talked about, things that you like or things you dislike, and then if you would generally just recommend it to a friend who's on the fence about buying this expansion or maybe a different expansion for a different game.
I mean, I've got basically 3 main points about the Oathbound to cover. So it depends where the others where the others are at.
Sure.
Well, I would highly recommend it. I think it's a wonderful update, and things like balance changes will happen after the fact. If you like the aesthetic, if you like the idea of like stomping around the galaxy in giant mechs, then yeah, go for it. It's really fun. And the Triceratops update is just sort of whipped cream on top, right?
Agreed.
Yeah, with the Oathbound faction, they are really fun to play as, but I wouldn't recommend them as your first faction. Maybe your third or second, if you feel like trying them out. With the Grails, I can't really say much about them because I have yet to actually get to a Grail in game. I played a bit too much Empire mode, and with the new wildlife, each new wildlife has 3 units. The apostates for Cyrenica and for Mycelians, but they definitely add a breath of fresh air into the mix that you would find across planets.
Yeah, they're hard to fight too, I think, which is important for returning players or maybe somebody who played the game and put it down and hasn't touched it in a while. I think that these are a nice challenging set of units for you to try and fight up against, and if you're in
And
the
also-
Empire mode, you can choose to fight them or not.
And
Yeah.
also just more variety.
Also, another thing to note is that owning the DLC, each DLC from Planetfall will actually give you more to discover in Empire mode, more traits, more stuff to level up, and more relics to capture.
Yeah. I actually hadn't seen that. That's a really good point to mention. Like, if you own the other things and you get even more nice things, it seems like locking stuff behind a little bit of a paywall, but I'm okay with it because thematically it makes sense to me. And yeah, I think that these developers have put a lot of love into this game. They deserve a little bit of extra pay here and there if we can get it to them.
Okay. So I guess it's just down to me and my points about the Oathbound.
Yeah, go for it.
Yep.
Say what you want to say.
Well, the first and I think the biggest point in their favor is one of the things that I very much like about Planetfall is the game is pretty well balanced in the sense that all the races and secret techs work together fairly well. There is it's a like I see the question pop up every now and then of like which race works best with which secret tech, and the answer is there isn't really a best combo. They all worked pretty well together, just in different ways. And that's a standard that the Oathbound do actually live up to fairly well. You can look at any given combination and see what they get out of it, and it's pretty hard to weigh up whether any of them are actually better.
Yeah, I have to.
Oathbound Heritor is an obvious pick just because they're the only faction that gets the native access to the entropy channel. Oathbound Celestian works pretty well because Lightbringers are a solid unit and the toughness synergizes well. Like Oathbound Lightbringers specifically are really solid because they're shooters instead of the usual beat people up with a burning fist model.
The Star Guides also count as seer units and have a unique ability, for example, as well.
Yeah, and it also gives you an early stagger resist mod, which is nice for aspirants and lets you hit stagger immunity on everything else. And Oathbound Promethean, similar deal. Reasonably early stagger resist mod. Oathbound Purifiers are horrendously nasty. And like I can go down the list, and really the only odd one out there, or rather what I thought was the odd one out, is Oathbound Xenoplague, and that's mostly because Xenoplague doesn't outright synergize with any race except arguably Amazon. Xenoplague works by setting up a whole parallel army production line in addition to your basic racial stuff, and that's what I thought up until the multiplayer game
Yeah.
that we just had a session of, where I realized, oh wait, it gives you that gives you early access to a stagger impact mod on such a melee focused faction. Right, so you end up with an entire army that's dealing massive impact.
And parasitic infection by melee because they changed xenografted muscles to battle suits as well now.
Yeah.
And on top of that, you get the early HP mods, which stack with the innate adjacency bonuses provided by your paladin.
Yeah, you get some very efficient toughness stacking there.
Yeah.
The other point is one thing I'm not quite so sure about is all of the factions are kind of like people were saying. There's a choice in how you can take them. There's the Kirko can be forgiving, or they can want ruthless vengeance on their oppressors, and the Vanguard can appeal to a couple of different kinds of people. The Oathbound have a very particular kind of leaning on what sort of people they are. Like, they very much want to be the noble, upright, morally righteous, knightly figures. they got a lot of ways. They got a surprising amount of effects that give them benefits for having a high reputation and generally being good sorts of people, and not really anything for the reverse. So there's sort of they kind of have a feel of being a designated good guy faction, and I'm not going to say that's a bad thing. That there's is if you're the kind of person who wants to feel like the hero and feel like you're playing upstanding people, then that's probably a plus for you. For me, I'm not so sure about it.
I will say in response to that I think just because you think you're the good guy doesn't mean you are the good guy. Like, you could end up committing all kinds of atrocities and be like, we're just, converting
Yeah,
people or whatever.
yeah, I mean, fair enough, but the game does have a reputation tracker that applies value judgments to what sort of actions that you take, and the Oathbound are basically unique of all of the races in the way that they are so heavily incentivized to keep that reputation meter high.
Yeah. I'll say the paladins are supposed to be good guys, but I think the seers are kind of evil because there was something mentioned in the stream about how if they don't like a paladin, they may arrange for stray artillery fire to hit him in the face. Like, if it's an evil paladin they accidentally promoted. I just love that idea. It's like they're just good on paper. They're not actually good guys.
I mean that's the thing though. Like, if it's an evil paladin who got promoted, is assassinating them actually a bad thing?
I mean, how did they get promoted in the first place? These guys should be able to see the future. That was my first thought. But I don't know. I love it. I think it's pretty cool. I recommend it. Dapperest, do you recommend the DLC?
Um, I'm not gonna say yes or no. Like, for my part, as a general rule, I tend to feel that just saying yes or no on something isn't very useful. I think we've talked quite a bit about what's good about it and what we like about it, and whether that's a recommendation in itself depends on what the listener is looking for.
Yeah, that's fair. 100% I agree. That's kind of why I was thinking, like, we don't need numbers. We just want
Yeah,
opinions. Strong opinions is going
the
to be enough
only
for people to make up their own mind.
yeah, the only real complaint I would have is the third point that I was going to get into, which is their top level tactical operation, Expedite Doom, is
Yes, that's
flagrantly
a bit.
broken right now and is definitely going to need to eat some nerfs.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, because instantly killing anything that has fatalism, doomed, or adversity is a bit over the
Well,
top.
that's not really the thing, right? Like, the game has instant kill effects.
Oh
And
yeah, I know.
that's
It's just
fine.
like
They're,
all
you know,
enemy
insta
units
kill
are 2
effects are not
hex.
by insta kill effects by themselves are not an awful thing. The problem is more that it's a 2 hex radius instant kill
Yeah.
effect that can be made automatically effective rather than a chancy roll fairly easily. Like, if you have Expedite Doom, then you already have the prerequisite operation, which is direct tribulation, which makes a whole stack vulnerable to that insta-kill effect. And it's also just really easy to pump out a stack of unmodded augurs and use their single action 9 range, you automatically have fatalism ability to make
2 or
things
3.
just automatically fail status checks. Like, not even 2 or 3, just pump out a full unmodded stack
No, I
of 6
meant.
of them.
Sorry.
Just
2 or
pump
3
out a full
diviners would
unmodded
be
stack
enough
of
as
6
well,
augurs
because
and
diviners
get
have
going.
an area of effect.
Sorry, I want to hear what Dapperest is saying. Dapperest,
Just
go.
like pump out a full unmodded stack of augurs, throw them into a fight, and slap fatalism on the biggest concentration of units you can find, which you can easily do because, again, you've got the movement range and then 9 range, and there is no chance of failure. And then just slap Expedite Doom on that, and you can delete most of a stack. Yeah, sure, the augurs probably die after. What do you care? They're unmodded tier 2s. You can build them from the start of the game.
I think we're in agreement. It's pretty ridiculous, but
But like, again, this is like the one thing. It is the one thing. Their end-game tactical operation is absurd. That's probably going to eat some nerfs. That's about it.
All right. Yeah. I think I'm about ready to wrap this up here. But Never, you wanted to say something really quickly, didn't you?
Yeah, what I was saying was not 2 or 3 augurs. What I was trying to say was 2 or 3 diviners, because they do 1 hex AoE, fatalism, or stuff like
Yeah,
that.
but that's a full
They can
action.
get it out during
I-
battle quickly.
I would love to hear what people have to say in the comments below, because I think this is actually something that people should and could debate for quite a while. And who knows, with future patches, it might actually change from one answer to the other. But thank you guys. I really appreciate you joining me here for the review, and hope to see you guys around for future ones.
Possibly.
Thanks, Woodslayer.
Yeah.
Take care, man.
You too.